Matt Weiss was officially terminated from his position as a co-offensive coordinator. Um, it still hasn't been a lot of, or really any details that's been released on the true nature of what he did wrong. Um, besides, I think the term was computer usage uh, something, So I'm not exactly sure. Were you able to find
I
out?
don't remember that term either, but
Very bland, very bland to say the least.
yeah, bland, vague. Don't think they obviously they want to move on from that, and
Right.
I certainly think that it tells us a lot that the move was made that decisively and that quickly after it was announced that he was going to be suspended and be away from the football program until they figured things out. And it didn't take long for them to come to the conclusion that they needed to part ways, that he had done something, it was that serious to say, you know, we're done here. No second chances. We got to move on here. And Matt Weiss has to be gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Cut bait and detach yourself and get away from the situation as fast as possible. Um, you know, but I do think it would be nice to get a little bit of some kind of transparency what happened with the situation because if not, if anything, just from a perception standpoint, I think a lot of times with the University of Michigan, especially in athletics, there have been a numerous amount of things that have happened over the course the last couple of years, both the hockey team, basketball team, the football team. One of the former basketball players crashed at Ward Manuel's car, a wife's car, and now a lot came out of it. And it's not so much of the incidents, but it's just, sometimes when things happen, get out there, say what happened, and have a legitimate, course of action afterwards. Now they were pretty swift with their action terms of terminating Matt, but at least be a little bit more transparent with what happened, And I think sometimes you can endear yourself to people a little bit more when you show yourself being a little bit vulnerable. But maybe that's just not how they want to roll, and I understand it. But I will say this is probably the smoothest and most swift action um, the football team has really taken in terms of terminating Matt Weiss compared to Jim Harbaugh's fiasco and all that.
The one thing I will take away from the lack of information that's out there, and we'll see if they follow through and deliver exactly what you're talking about and come clean to everything. And when I say come clean, they may not have anything personally to come clean in regards to the university, the athletics department, anything that they've done wrong. Just simply, hey, they discovered something uh, nefarious being done by Matt Weiss and took the action and should be respected for doing that and taking care of the situation. But maybe and hopefully for people like you and myself, I would love to have the information and have the full story, that it's only under wraps right now because of legal purposes and needing for
Sure.
all of it to be vetted, investigated, and dealt with before they can go ahead and reveal the entire story.
What refresh my memory? Who, and this was a totally different situation, but what was the gosh, what was that coach name in Ohio State? He got in trouble for, was a domestic issue with his
Zach Smith,
thank you.
yeah, wide receivers coach. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, that was pretty when that news hit. I mean, the details of that were pretty, I mean, were pretty apparent earlier on. It didn't take as long, or I can't exactly remember. What do you recall from the situation?
Well, that was out there. Whether the information was, and I believe that most of it was actual and reality. Well, that was because there were some pretty heavy hitters in the college football journalism,
Mm,
realm society. Brett McMurphy in particular, that had been investigating and all those things. And you're also dealing with a situation that's public record, that you can go and find out a lot of what happened. So that's why a lot of those details were known immediately.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. The only reason I brought it up was I was trying to look at, a program that's just as big as Michigan and how do they handle, you know, legal issues, right? When it comes to their coaching staff. Um, and it's always look, we've seen countless situations, some extremely heinous, some not as much. I mean, you can go as bad as Jared Sandusky of Penn State, and when these things happen on a coaching staff that don't involve the head coach directly, in which it's not the head coach doing the crime in particular, but it happens under their watch and all that stuff. It's always interesting to see how do they handle it, right? And maybe it's easier from us on the outside looking in to say, well, hey, this person's doing such and such. Isn't it easier just to cut bait, or what really goes into that thought process?
One of the distinctions I'll draw between the two situations would be, as I believe we best understand the Matt Weiss situation, he is accused of, and shoot, based on how it was dealt with, I think it's more than accusations at this point, but you know, crime against, whether those were other coaches at Michigan or players, or I wouldn't think students. I would think, it would have to be within the football operation or the athletics program, that he was digging up information, going into private emails. You know,
Well,
he was committing a crime. Um, in the case of Zach Smith at Ohio State, was he committing a crime? Well, it's a domestic situation, so it
right.
wasn't against the football program. It wasn't that. So it was a personal matter, and him violating some probation uh, conditions that were brought against him, and that sort of thing. So there you've got that gray area of, okay, we've got this employee who is in this messy situation over here, and how much do you allow those individuals to work it out themselves with their spouse, significant other, family, domestic situation, versus it's nothing that was done against the university, nothing within our walls, versus the Matt Weiss situation was pretty much targeted right at the University of Michigan and people on staff and people within the program.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, and by no means nor were you am I ranking,
Sure.
the
Yeah.
incidents, but it's always, I look at when things happen, like I say, it all varies in terms of the level of crime. And it's like, when things do get swept under the rug, or it takes a while for it seemingly for the head coach to make a move or to remove that person from their program, I always think about, like, well, is that person really worth it, right? And this doesn't apply to Matt Weiss, right? They were
Mhm.
swift in taking action, but is that person really worth keeping on your staff? Like, what is the true value um, that they bring compared to if things come out that you do that cost benefit analysis, right? And I can't think of, just in general, like one coach where it's like when something like this has happened in terms of a legal issue where like it's like, no, man, I guess I get it. I don't understand the crime, but I can understand even having the hesitation keeping that guy. It's rare where you can even say, you know what, that guy was vital to the program. It's always interesting, when you see it play the other way, when swift action isn't taken, you know.
Two guys that come to mind, and ironically, they both coached Arizona schools, are Rich Rodriguez at Arizona and Herm Edwards at Arizona State.
Mm,
That they both had off the field issues that they were dealing with. The Herm Edwards stuff based on what I know, that's still being worked out. NCAA is still investigating. We have yet to hear all of it, but there were recruiting violations during COVID was one of the big uh, points in all of that. And I don't know. Uh, I'm speculating here, everyone, so don't
Right. Right.
jump on me here because we haven't heard top to bottom. But I have had Michelle Gardner. She works for the Arizona Republic, right there for all the football events, all the news conferences, investigating everything. We've had her on a few times, so we pretty much have a decent handle on what the violations were and what the infractions. And it's not egregious, blatant, like over the top, paying players, changing grades, or anything like that. We're talking about having high school athletes on campus when they shouldn't have, and some minor, what I would consider to be minor violations.
Mhm.
Herm Edwards, excuse me, I don't believe would have been fired over that alone. I also don't believe that he would have been fired based on his football record alone. It was kind of this combination of, is he really worth it? This is going on off the field, and there's some other things brewing off the field, and he's really not tearing it up on the field. So the combination of the two, is he really worth defending and sticking it out all the way through when he's really not getting the job done on the field? Even though these things aren't probably really going to derail the program
Right.
or slap us with any kind of long lasting infractions that are going to impact the program, and kind of those things put together. And the same thing with Rich Rodriguez. He was doing okay, but it wasn't like, okay, this guy's winning Pac-12 championships, so we're going to hang with him and hope that it works out. Well,
Right.
he's underachieving on the field, and now there's all sorts of mess that we have to deal with because he's not running a clean program. So, you know what? Put those two things together and show him the door.
Time to cut bait. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's I guess at the end of the day, it comes down to, especially for head coaches, if you're going to, not always have a clean ship, at least have a sail in the right direction. you know,